Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Vital Voices Live. I am your host, your guest host, Bellamy Young, and I am so honored to be here with you today in this incredible space where women's voices take center stage. Today, I am joined by two extraordinary women, leaders who have turned their advocacy into action on a global scale. Ashley Judd is a fierce humanitarian and champion for gender equality, and she is using her voice to speak out for women everywhere. And Jaha Dukureh is a fearless activist and founder of Safe Hands for Girls, whose work has led to policy change and global awareness in the fight to end female genital mutilation. I am beyond honored to be in conversation with these amazing humans, and I'm so happy that you are here with us and that you are here with us, and I welcome everyone to Vital Voices Live. Now, you guys, you first came to know each other, I think, in 2014. You had started a petition to end female genital mutilation, and Ashley, you became aware of it and made a choice to raise awareness and lend support to that effort. Since then, the two of you have stood side by side in rooms around the world where truth is uncomfortable, to say the least. Tell us what you think drew you together, not just as advocates, but clearly as dear, dear friends.
I appreciate the honor and human right of participating here today and using voice. I came from a creek, and so it's kind of weird to be in a space that's all carpeted and fuzzy. In the sort of spaces in which Jaha and I live, and where girls' genitals are mutilated is not like the space, and yet we are all part of the female story, and this is true too. It's both and. This is true too. So thank you all for being here. And there's so many ways to begin to answer that question, and I think even saying that speaks to the holistic nature of our stories. And there's so many ways to drop into the plot point and on the timeline. And I think where I will start is that, I somehow had the foresight when I went to, the first time I started traveling in a humanitarian capacity with Population Services International. I said to Gloria Steinem, who do I need to meet while I'm there in any particular country? And Gloria would always introduce me to women that she knew in the grassroots context. And so she introduced me to the great Agnes in Kenya, who taught me about female genital mutilation and sent practitioners to my doorstep. So that's how I became aware of FGM. So it was natural for me when Jaha reached out to completely support her. And I think what we have in common is we grew up with the family ouch, right? And our identification is around our feelings of helplessness and powerlessness, where our major caregivers were not able to meet our needs as talented, brilliant, needy, defenseless, vulnerable children who were just longing to be seen and heard and attended to. And of course, we love our parents, and when our parents love us back but are unable to meet our natural needs, that creates tremendous internal conflict and a lot of feelings. And I think where we have our core identification is around these feelings of turmoil as children. And in Jaha's book, very much to her credit, at the opening, you talk so much about, yes, I'm a survivor, and yes, I'm an activist, and yes, I'm a humanitarian, but I haven't allowed myself to heal yet, and I am human, and I desire to be whole. That's what we have in common. And so, Elise, a little bit of a newsflash, I do it for myself now, because I do it for that child inside of me, not just the adult who is sharing hope and healing and possibility and solution with girls and women around the world, but for the child who needed a major caregiver and didn't have one. And I think that's what we have in common. And these feelings teach me what my values are. My values are not concepts. They are leadership. They are moral action. They are creativity. They are imagination. They create my incentive to citizenship and female solidarity. And my inner teen just wants to go out and fuck shit up. That's her and her righteous anger and backbone and integrity. And then my adult comes on board and speaks on her behalf and shows up in this room in a dress. and says, sorry, my inner teen cussed. She's not sorry.
She's not sorry. And every engine needs fuel. So I see your inner teen. I see all of you. And tell me, from your perspective, Jaha.
And I think it's everything she said. And, you know, after writing my book, I realized that a lot of my strength comes from grief, and especially losing my mother at such a young age. And, you know, when my mother died, I don't think I knew whether she loved me or she hated me or she was afraid of me. And these were feelings that I held and never fully addressed them. And I think Ashley, for me, I grew up watching her on screens. And never did I think that someone like her would connect with me, being from the smallest country in mainland Africa and one of the smallest villages in the Gambia, as a matter of fact, coming from a family where no one before me had graduated high school, to come into the US, to be forced into a marriage, and starting this petition that someone like her not only signed, was able to help me get attention to it. But when I talked to her, I realized that despite the disparity of where we come from, the human story and that 14-year-old is the same. And I think that's what allowed us to connect and bond and be here today and do the kind of work that we do, that we are both so passionate about. And you know that it comes from an authentic place. The reason why we are trying to save so many girls is because we've been there. We've needed someone to stand up for us the same way we're trying to stand up for millions of girls. And one thing I want to say is that girls that come from where I come from, or that have the kind of stories that I do, rarely make it to where I'm sitting. So when I walk into rooms like this, I walk on behalf of the 200 million girls that have been subjected to female genital mutilation, more than 600 million of them that have been forced to get married before they were 18. And these are not just numbers. These are the realities, and a lot of them do not make it alive. Like my little sister, who died at 1 week old because she was forced to go through female genital mutilation.
I'm so grateful that you're here to speak for her, to speak for them.
What is her name?
Fatu.
Fatu.
And I would sort of flip that and say, because of the matriarchs who were forced to do that to her, because of the systemic generational inheritance and the construing that was good for her and them.
Exactly. I think what a lot of people do not realize is the people that carry out female genital mutilation are women. It's not usually men, even though it's done for the benefit of men, but it's done by women to little girls who do not have a say in what happens to their body. Even before they learned how to speak, one of the most sensitive and important part of their body was brutally cut off. And you have people using religion and culture to justify abuse.
I so love in your book where you say this is not the law of God, it is the law of men.
No, absolutely. I remember when my baby sister died, I was very young, and everyone kept saying that this was the will of God. And I knew that was not the will of God. We had a choice. And anywhere else, if parents were cutting off the hands, ears, or any other body part of their children, we would be outraged. We would not still be here talking about the fact that 230 million girls are subjected to female genital mutilation, and that every year 6 million girls are at risk of going through this practice. And we've barely seen any change in the decline.
I was also absolutely gobsmacked to find that the way you found out was in your marriage.
Yes.
That you didn't know until the moment came.
I went through type 3 FGM, which means that, and I'm sorry if for those listening as well as those that are in the room, but I think it's important for us to talk about what this really is so that people have a deeper...
It's medically
vital.
accurate sex education in human biology, which, yes, it's uncomfortable, and we have that question about a trap, but I just want to say, like, Yes, set a boundary. Yes, it's uncomfortable. And this is human biology and medically accurate sex education, which we certainly need in the United States.
Absolutely. So what I went through is my entire clitoris was cut off and my labia was also cut off. But that wasn't enough. They used my own tissue to seal my vagina. So that way I'm unable to have sex until the night of my wedding, where they take a knife or a razor blade and cut me back open so my husband can have sex with me the same day.
Which is rape.
And that's how I discovered that I went through FGM when I was 15 years old here in New York. This was not even in the Gambia. It happened in New York City.
And you were made to go do a reversal
Yes.
in New York.
In New York. And when I did the reversal, I was told to go home the same day and have sex with my husband, otherwise it's going to close back up. And this was done by an American doctor who knew that I was 15, who did not make the call to protect me.
I'm led off topic to ask you about both of you do such beautiful, deep, deep work. And it is so difficult to face and so important and vital that we do so. So many times people say in activism that the personal is political, but this is much, much deeper. This is spiritual. And so I wonder in moments as you're educating or as you're facing things, how you make space for the sacred as you walk a difficult path like this.
I mean, I believe that my activism is spiritual, is ancestral. It's my grandmother's prayers. It's my mother's silent prayer for everything that she wanted to be and she couldn't be. Mm. And justice without spirituality is just noise. Mm. And that's how I look at everything that I do. And that's the lens that I look at my activism and know that this did not start with me. I'm able to sit here and be in this space because my grandmother prayed for this. My mother wished she was able to do everything that I am here doing today. And because I saw her strength, despite the challenges that we had, but I'm here because of her courage. I'm here because of her strength. And I still carry her spirit with me in everything I do, in every word that comes out of my mouth.
I see that deeply. Jaha, may I ask you, as we speak on topics, difficult as they are, deep as they are, it's a very different process than writing. Like we really meet ourselves on the page in a different way. It's so personal. There can be an engine behind sharing that has, takes other people into consideration, but when it's on the page, it's you and your life. Did you have any awakenings or experiences writing the book and going back into your life that moved you, surprised you, helped you, changed you, hurt?
I always say that writing this book was the beginning of my healing journey. Mm. It allowed me to acknowledge things that I've never acknowledged before. In my book, I wrote that my mother was my first bully. Mm. She was the first. When I was growing up, I was always told that my eyes were too big. And a lot of I realized when I was writing this book that a lot of my insecurities come from things that my mother said to me when I was young. Mm. But then I also realized that it's because she was scared. I was born into a very conservative Muslim family. My dad is an imam. And my mother herself went through tremendous abuse in her life. And then she gave birth to her 8th child, which is me. And I'm totally different from anything in my family. And as a result of that, I think both my mother and dad didn't know what to do with me. They loved my courage, but they were also afraid of the amount of trouble that I would always get into. And they tried to tame me, especially my mother tried to tame me more than my dad did. And I never dealt with her death because 3 months after she died, I was shipped to New York to marry a man I had never met that was 2 times older than me. So instead of dealing with the fact that I just lost my mother, I was traumatized. Every night that I spent in that marriage felt like someone was raping me over and over again. And I realized that I just built up pain. I was going from trauma to pain to then becoming an activist that was trying to save the world and trying to protect girls from not experiencing the things that I experienced. But I forgot to feel and sit with myself and acknowledge that none of what I experienced was normal, and it's not anything that anyone should go through. And I think the first time I did that was when I started writing this book. And I remember crying for days. I grieved my mother for the first time and forgave her and forgave myself. And I think since then, now I pray for her when I pray. And even saying that I love her. I think for it's been almost 20 years since my mother, it's been more than 20 years actually since she passed away. And I feel like for 17 to 18 years of that, I just never acknowledged that I had a mother who died and all of these things happened to me. And writing this book allowed me to do that and sit with myself and acknowledge everything I didn't acknowledge about myself before, including being molested as a child as well. I think when I wrote this book was the first time I shared that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this is where I have those enormous feelings of recognition and, if I may be allowed, encouragement and cheering and big sister pride and rooting, because I can't do it for you, but I sit beside you and encourage you, because the personal is political and it is policy, because survivor-centered care, lived experience, our narrative driven by the reality of our feelings coming up is what should inform everything. The trauma I do not transform in myself, I will transfer. And it's not making space for the sacred. The work is sacred. I make space while sitting here in this chair. It is how I must do the work. You know, I'm coming out of a year of living an interior life. To have gone inside, be with these young parts. You know, my 14-year-old, when I was reading her book, was like, she knew to go to the guidance counselor. I lived alone without major caregivers for 2 years as a child. Adults commercially, sexually exploited me in Japan. And how we tell our stories and how we look at stories is important, because, you know, of course I want to share the mic, and in this country, disproportionately women of color and our missing and murdered Indigenous women, but my family was famous, and I was being neglected, abandoned, and going through trauma and deprivation while in the media. So we have to look at all the stories carefully. But going into the solution, because it's abusive to point out problems without highlighting solutions, is to start right here. To go far and wide, I must go in and deep. I need a teacher, I need instructions, I need a witness, and I need time, and I need willingness, and I gotta sit with those feelings. That's the secret sauce. That's the secret sauce. I need a God of my own understanding, you know, whatever that higher power is. And to me, that's like my actual parent. Yeah. And, you know, whether it's poetry or drum circle or whatever, but find that healing community. And I can be with you at Vital Voices. I can get that degree at Harvard and be given the Dean Scholar Award. I can sit with the womanist Indigenous people, and all that is great, but it's exterior. It's an inside job.
Yeah. How are you feeling on your path with that? How was this year?
It was grueling. It was liberating. I was held. I was loved. My needs were met in exquisite detail every breath of the way. So much inner safety, so much inner trust. This platform of inner refuge, amazing. And like, you know, I just gave my inner 9-year-old her birthday party. My 13-year-old's having a dance party next weekend. Like I'm provisioning and supplying what was lacking.
Yes.
And the way I go out into the world is just the wholeness. It's like the mint tea is stronger in the cup because these essences, this wholeness, this integration is coming. I felt all my feelings as an adult. Didn't know that I didn't have access to my feelings as a kid, but when I had the safety as an adult and 20 years of recovery, in 12-step program and wisdom teacher and IFS, all the feelings came. And it's beautiful, but that's really what it takes, you know? And I always said, it's not that my words are so different, because I think I've been saying a lot of the same things. It just gets deeper and deeper and more integrated. And so, you're right on time.
She said, you're right on time.
And that's why we're fellow travelers. Like, no one can feel these feelings for me, but the ones who are a couple steps ahead, they're just like, you got it, babe, you're doing great. And I'm like pooping and spitting up and crying and howling and then resting, and I lose my voice because I've been wailing, and they're like, you're doing great. I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? But that's what healing from misogyny and patriarchy is. There's not a path, we are the path. It's inside.
I have to say, I am frequently saved by kind external self-talk, like, because what's going on inside is quite less than that. So if I can just have that cushion of pause to say, honey, you're doing your best, things can turn around.
Yeah.
But tell me, Ashley, when your dear friend said, will you write the introduction to my book, when you held that book, her story, Manifest, how did you find your way in? How did you want to guide us in? And what did you perhaps see of her that you hadn't seen before as a friend, as an advocate, as an activist?
I think what I mentioned about I think the identification and the relief that feelings are allies and friends and an encouragement. That next stage had arrived. And when you said, when you wrote, I listened hard and spoke softly, but I was screaming inside, and the recognition and admission of the rage, you know, because when I came into recovery, like I had one color and it was rage, you know? And then the alchemy is that rage becomes strength, energy, and motivation.
And endurance.
Yeah, but the endurance has to come from this inner refuge and inner safety and inner trust and that succor that comes from inside, where I'm okay in spite of and no matter what. In spite of and no matter what. And that's really the place inside, that this kind of spiritual autonomy and spiritual authority, author, I write that inside, and then I come out and I connect with you. But there really does have to be, because at the end, I'm born alone, and at the end, I'm going to take that last breath. Like God exhaled me, and then it's going to, and I'm on my, but I can be interdependent with you in this walk, you know, and Graça Michelle and Malala and Gloria and Madeleine Albright, who called me buddy, and you and all the good people, right? And the Argentinian feminists who are so badass, and all of them giving us this encouragement. But I got to have myself and my inner family. Because we're together at 2:00 in the morning. You know, can I tell a story? Because this thing about I believe you, like I see you, I witness you, I believe you. I was standing on a street in Cambridge, Massachusetts, waiting for a ride to go over to the Lincoln Center for the premiere of She Said, which is the book that Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey wrote about, our article in the New York Times about Harvey, about us. And I was standing there waiting, kind of loafing, shifting from foot to foot. And this woman, who I did not know, a neighbor, came walking down the street with a small child, a boy. And I see her see me. This is a recognizable phenomenon in my world. They see me like, oh. And her face changes, and she begins to weep. And and as she draws closer, she falls to her knees. And she is sobbing. She is having an experience inside of herself. And she puts her hands in prayer and she says, "Thank you." And what I'm able to recognize is that she is having an experience inside of herself where something I have experienced is being reflected in her own experience. And she turns to her son and says, "This is Ashley. She helped me."
Oh,
And what I know is that's really not about me.
I know.
And I said, "You're welcome, peace be with you," and went to the premiere of She Said at the Lincoln Center. I mean, God does good work. God does good work. And God comes to me disguised as my life.
And I love that you said you've been saying some of the same things over the years, but they've just gone deeper.
Yeah.
I think that's a reflection of the immutability of our own personal truths and our own personal paths, and everything else that's going on around us can feel like a thunderstorm or, or a bright sunny day. Those are fewer, turns out sometimes, but
I mean, don't you think wisdom is just knowing with more of ourselves?
being able to listen. It's so noisy so often. I feel like the wisdom is being able to listen and accepting what you hear.
Yeah.
Because we have so many other ideas about what might be right or our path. Or I want to turn the focus back on you. Jaha, tell me, as we speak about facing the death of your mom, grieving her, facing your life as a narrative, right? Not from an inside, I will survive it, but as an outside, look what I did, or look at my path. How do you take very personal, very local truths? How do you stay centered on that as you bring it all forth globally? The UN, parliaments, classrooms, person to person.
I think honesty is honoring myself, is honoring my story, honoring the land that I come from, and the people that came before me. And always knowing that regardless of where I am, sharing my truth is the light for me. And that's the path that I've always walked on. When I started speaking out against FGM and child marriage by sharing my own story, I remember how I was outcasted in my community. I'm still the black sheep in my family. Despite the world might think that I'm very, very successful, but I think I'm still considered the black sheep in my family. But I feel like the day that I lose this ability to speak truth, whether that's to power, whether that's to the religious leader or the traditional leader that is saying that they're doing this practice because God told them it was okay. I feel like the day that I lose that ability to be able to speak truth to them is the day that I no longer am who I am. And it's never been easy to put yourself out there because no one really asks. I remember I was in South Africa I was invited by Mrs. Mbeki, who's the wife of the former president of South Africa. And it had been during a time when I was so exhausted. And it was young women that she was mentoring. And I walked into the room and I did my presentation. And afterwards, one person, and I feel like she's the smartest and has so much wisdom. And she just looked at me and said, "I don't really have a question. I just want to know, how are you? Not like I'm good, not I just want to know, how are you?" And I just broke down because no one really asked me that. People always think that I'm strong and I'm all of these things, but no one really wants to know what cost all of this came at, what I had to lose, the threats on my life, the constant inner battles with myself. And just that one person seeing me and seeing that I wasn't okay in that moment, even though I was giving this amazing presentation that everyone gave me a standing ovation for, the only question she had for me that day was, how is Jaha doing inside?
How did you answer her?
I cried. I just stood there and cried like a baby. And I'm a big baby. If you read my book, you'll see that I fell in love for the first time when I was in my early 30s, I believe. And then I had my heart broken 3 months into the marriage, by the way. But I'm learning who I am every day. And I love that. I'm discovering new things about myself. I'm discovering what I like. I mean, my friend and I, Simone, we were just talking about, I just came back from Dubai yesterday, and I feel like I'm a hitchhiker at this point in my life. I went to Dubai for 2 days. I was supposed to come back, and I ended up staying for more than 8 days. And I love the fact that I'm able to do that. The scared little girl that wrote this book would have never taken those chances. Mm-hmm. But this version of me, writing this book is the best thing I have done for myself. Mm-hmm. It allowed me to let go of all the bad things that I wrote about in this book. Mm-hmm. And I feel like since I wrote it, now I'm just thriving. Mm-hmm. I'm happier as a person. I'm not completely healed. I make a lot of mistakes. And I screw up a lot. Even, my kids tell me all the time, it's so hard raising you. You just don't listen. And I'm like, really? But I grew up with them. And I think sometimes it doesn't even feel like I'm their mother. My oldest son is 17. I have a 15-year-old. And then my youngest is 11. But I think the oldest two, they feel like it's so hard raising me because they're like, you just don't know how to pick guys. And then my daughter would be like, how would you ever find a man if you're just sitting at home? Who's gonna, how? You need to go out more. You need to get, and I'm just like, okay, but I love the fact that we're living a life that I didn't have. The relationship I have with my children is not the kind of relationship I had with the fact that they're even able to tell me all the things that they're telling me and be that open. If I did that with my mom, I would have ended up with a slap.
Have you let them read the book?
I mean, I didn't have to. They bought it on Amazon themselves. So,
what do you think they learned about you? That they, as
oh
a
my
human?
God, those kids. My kids. I mean, I think they knew. I think one of the things that, because my son saw the book on Amazon, and there's always a sample. And then when he was reading about my first marriage, the first thing he said was, is this my dad? And I'm like, no, baby. And I have your copy. When you come home, I'll give it to you. And I think you should read it. And he was like, Mommy, even before I read this, I just want to say that I'm really sorry you had to go through all of this. The fact that you have so much love in you and to know that this is what you experienced. So for me, I think what they learned about me is the life that we are living right now came from a past of too much trauma. My daughter was interviewed by CNN last year when I was in the middle of fighting to keep the law in the Gambia. And they asked her about FGM and child marriage. And she said, this is something that used to happen very far in the past. This doesn't happen anymore. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, how sheltered. This is something I went through. But it also shows how change happens, because just one generation down, she thinks this is something that's ancient and it doesn't happen anymore. But without fully understanding that her mother was a child bride twice. She's a product of that child marriage. Her mother is a survivor of FGM. But Khadija is so strong. When I look at her, sometimes I envy her because I'm like, her strength, her wisdom, and just being free to be whoever she wants to be. I didn't have that. So I think it's been worth it. Because if I didn't have the courage to share my story and do the kind of work that I'm doing, I don't think my kids would be who they are as well. It's because I did that. We now have that life.
Is there something, both of you, is there a sentence that you would want to say to your younger selves? Not advice, but what did your younger self not hear? What you wish someone had said to you? Just whispered some sort of recognition that might have changed your path. Not that we're on the path we're on.
Well, my young selves are here, and I reparent them a lot.
Good.
Well, they're actually tucked away in their safe place. They're not here.
Oh, okay.
But so there are multiple ways to answer that. I would say, I've got you, I'm here, you can relax, you can be your actual chronological age, you don't have to be parentified. You can lay down your survival strategies and mechanisms that you developed to survive. I call it the tent poles. I will nurture you, I will guide you, I will support you, and I will protect you. And then there's a whole, that's a lot, and I love you. Yeah, I love you. But so that's what I would say. And I didn't need words. In actual reality, I needed a ride to school. I needed help with geometry. I needed groceries. I needed someone not to send me to Japan where adults commercially sexually exploited. I needed presence. I needed two-legged human mammals. I needed someone to put me to bed, to teach me about my vagina. I needed humans. So there's a part of me that's like, words, show up, right? And then I would go back in and say, because I'm with myself, your circumstances do not have the authority to define you, and that is a form of blasphemy. And you are love, you are made of love.
I'm taking it in, I'm looking at it like a neon sign. Your circumstances do not have the authority to define you.
They do not name who you are. You are the face before you were born, as the Buddhists say.
Yeah.
Or hidden in Christ, as the Christians would say. You are like the mystery, beyond all conditioning and circumstances.
I feel healed by hearing that, so thank you for putting it to words. Words, those words were useful, so thank you.
Circumstances do not have the authority to name who you are, and to allow it to is a form of idolatry, because you are made of love.
Do you have anything that comes to mind?
I think for me, if I had to say or whisper anything to my little self, it would be that I see you, I hear you, you're loved, you're worthy, and you don't have to be strong to be loved. Yeah.
I breathed that in too.
Yeah.
Tell me, you guys, of all the incredible work you do and all the questions you get about it, what is something no one ever asks you that you wish you got the chance to talk about this work?
I think it's something I said earlier, is the cost and the price that all of this comes at. I don't think anyone ever asks me that. Being from the Gambia, when I started speaking out against, both FGM and child marriage, my entire community felt that it was an attack on their identity, on their culture, on everything that they are. And being in a Western, environment where FGM wasn't fully understood, it almost felt like I was stuck in between two worlds. And I was outcasted by my community and my family. And I felt like I didn't belong in the other world that I was in as well. But no one really asked the emotional toll any of this has come at. Every time I go out in public, I remember when I first started speaking out around 2013, 2014, when the media attention was really, really heavy. Every time I did a media interview, I would go back home and crawl in my bed for days, and I would just shake. And no one really ever asked me how I was doing in those moments or how I was dealing with having to relive my trauma over and over again. And people really didn't want to know anything else about who I am except this horrible thing that I have been through, where I'm like, I'm so much more than that. Yes, I went through FGM, but the human being, the professional, I want people to also want to know, what does Jaha like? What drives me as a person? Not just, that aspect of my life. I want like for instance, when I started working for the World Bank, it was something that I was really, really proud of. But a lot of my colleagues were more interested in things that they read online about me than they were interested in knowing how I'm there. What's my background? What did I study in college? I was a banker before I started my activism. I worked for Wells Fargo. And yeah, so I want people to want to know the human being and not just, yeah. I want them to ask about the human.
Well, later I want to know what your favorite songs were when you sang your book and danced when you were like a young adolescent. I want to know what your favorite songs were then and now.
I used to organize talent shows when I was in middle school. That's part of why I used to get in so much trouble. So I used to organize talent shows. I had really bad taste in music, to be honest.
There's no such thing.
No.
There's joy.
Now that I think about it, I think I promoted misogyny at that age because I listened to like the rap. I remember like I was very wild. I mean, it's not a justification for what my parents did, but thinking about it, I'm like, I remember there was a talent show when I was in the 8th grade, and I danced to It's Hot in Here by Nelly.
Sure.
And the same way they were taking off their clothes, I was doing the same thing. And I remember down to my bra, and one of the school teachers just came and pulled me off stage.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting suspended, but I listened to a lot of Destiny's Child. I was a huge Beyonce and Kelly fan back then. I listened to a lot of R&B. I listened to a lot of Michael Jackson. And I was always, just organizing talent shows. And I was also always on TV, speaking out against issues that children were facing in the Gambia at the time. And I would never tell my parents that I was, going to be on TV dancing. They'll just turn on TV at 6 p.m. and see my face pop up. And then I'll get beaten at home for doing things like that. But I was always this spirited kid, which I think is part of the reason why my mother was so afraid, because she knows the world that we come from and that girls like me would never be accepted.
So I have a lot of feelings in my body right now. I have like feelings here, and my own tears. So I'm going to start with what I've learned first, and this is why I have teachers. My behavior was a perfect reflection of what was going on in my home.
Yeah.
And I needed protection and guidance.
Yes.
And I was faultless. And I internalized what was going on, and I was, quote, right on time.
Yeah.
None of this was my responsibility, and none of this was my fault. I, when I was 11, would dance to Rod Stewart's Do You Think I'm Sexy? See how much we have in common? And it was only when we visited cousins in Pennsylvania in a household that was more functional did an adult go,
Yeah.
because the caregivers I lived with, no, that's not my fault. I was a blameless, vulnerable, defenseless child.
What gives you joy these days?
So much gives me joy.
What that you want to share gives you joy. There are boundaries here.
Coloring, looking at my fairy book, my magnifying glass for looking at flowers.
Oh my God, a magnifying glass.
Play dates with other kids who are raising their inner kids. Being with my partner, I do have an adult in me. I really do. I can chronologically be 57 years old. The Great Smoky Mountain, any national park. Actually, it gives me joy to be real. It gives me joy to be authentic and to share this moment and to have that recognition and identification with a woman from the smallest country in sub-Saharan Africa, from the smallest village, who had that experience. And, I had a teacher see a picture of me from a slumber party and shame me. He should have noticed that there was something wrong in my home and not punished me for that. That's a failure of the system. That is a failure of the system. And so the invitation, the way I wanted to reframe the question is not what I do hope you will ask me. What I would prefer is what can you ask yourself? How am I seeing? How am I looking? How can I flip it? Gloria always says, when we talk about women and hold them responsible, would I do that for Blacks? Would I do that for Jews? Would I do it for Asian? What is that? And what will you do to tend to your own soul? What will you do, like it says in Deuteronomy, to wake up, stay alert, be vigilant? Jesus' last suggestion to his disciples was stay alert. With the Buddha, when they said, how did you attain enlightenment? He said, I'm not enlightened. He said, I'm awake. How will you wake up the child inside of you?
Well, that is a beautiful place for our conversation today to come to a close. To say that I am grateful for the time shared, for the heart shared, for the way you're living your lives, for the way you're showing up for yourselves, and the way you choose to share that with the rest of us. I say a deep and profound thank you. And I am also very grateful for everybody who is joining us here and subsequently ad infinitum via the interwebs. I want to thank you because these are the voices that are moving the world forward, and you are a part of that movement just by showing up. This is Vital Voices Live. I'm Bellamy Young. This is Ashley. This is Jaha. You're all going to get her wonderful book, which it will be a life changer for you. And I have to read your book now. I haven't had that yet. I will have that pleasure now. Until next time, keep using your voice, keep lifting others up, and keep believing in the power of women to change the world.